All right, welcome everyone to our next AU Core Technical Design Group meeting. I'm just going to start sharing my screen and we'll get through things. I think maybe a couple of people might need to go on mute. Just had some noise there. Okay, so can people see that?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. All right. Let's kick off and I'll just make sure I'm actually sharing the right one. Yes, the Thursday meeting. Perfect. All right. So our agenda for today. So we've got our usual business that we go through, including approval of minutes. I promise this time I've actually got the polls working. We'll do an update on actions from our previous meeting. I'll talk about an update with JIRA, and then we're going to go through what the results of the electronic vote that closed this morning on the adoption of the gender harmony concept name to use. Then we've got the consensus bit around AU Core Encounter and AUCDI Encounter. So there have been 2 change requests that were put out for review for people. So we're going to go through and make a decision on those today. And also make a decision on the AUCDI mapping for Encounter that has been out for review. And there'll also be an update on the Encounter class values discussion that came out of our pre-consensus meeting that we had last Friday. And then we'll move into doing a walkthrough of the 2 gender harmony, or the next 2 gender and sex change proposals that Ruben has put up. We're only going to do a quick walkthrough today. And then the next meeting we'll go through and have that be the target of where we'll make the decision. So it's more of a highlight and a walkthrough today. They are there on our JIRA. And then we'll talk about what we're doing in the next series of meetings. So let's get on to our usual business. So this is what we do every time. We approve our minutes. So the minutes were sent out for review. There was some feedback in there. That feedback has been incorporated. So these are the minutes here. We don't have any outstanding comments at this time. So I'm going to ask, is someone happy to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
So, Sanjeev, thank you. Is someone happy to second that?
I'll second that, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
I think that was Stephen, wasn't it? That moved.
Yes, that was.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Oh, Stephen moved. I seconded.
I'm
Gotcha.
happy for someone else to move.
I'm fine as well with Stephen. I'd raised my hand. I thought a motion. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
So we'll say Stephen motion.
No, given that Richard comes from the same organization like me, I'm happy for the other one to move, just as a matter of balancing.
So for the minutes in the record, we'll say that Sanjeev has motioned and that Richard has seconded. And then what I'm going to do now is launch our meeting poll. So you should see in front of you a meeting poll. Please let me know if that hasn't come through. No, that is. People are voting. Perfect.
I presume the mover and seconder should do what? Well, actually, should we affirmative? Should we abstain? Should we just not submit?
We can, Richard. We can vote. You can vote affirmative since that you have moved or you have second. That's counted as affirmative. So.
Okay, right. I wasn't sure whether we would count as not. Anyway, thanks. I'll just vote.
No, it's only the chair, I guess, who.
Yeah, only the chair. Only the chair doesn't get to vote. All the others get to vote. And since you have seconded, so therefore you it's natural for you to vote affirmative.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got those votes in. I'm going to end that poll and then share the results. And hopefully everyone can see that now. So we have the motion has passed. Those minutes are approved. Thanks everyone for participating. I think this is a much easier way to go through things now. Okay, so we've got our approval of minutes. Update on actions from the previous meeting. Those were all on me. I've done them, which was sending out the electronic vote, which has happened, putting out the information on how to contribute to what a system supporting around human name. We made that agreement that we would go through as a group and look to clarify which parts of human name are we supporting. And the first step in that is asking people to fill out, to respond to the request for information, to fill out which parts of human name do they support, and then we'll table that for discussion and come through and make a decision around which parts we do want to tag with must support in AU Core. And the other bit, I had to send out the invites for the introduction to AU Core. That happened in January, so that's all done. I also want to talk about JIRA now. So we actually have the JIRA set up, which is fantastic. We were using GitHub for specification feedback. We are no longer doing that. We are now using HL7 JIRA. So this is the same JIRA that all the international projects use, and all the other HL7 Australia specifications will also use this. We've migrated those last week. So all the specification feedback that was originally raised in the GitHub has now been moved over to JIRA, which is why if you'd raised something, you will have seen those comments come through. And we've also created, sorry, Stephen?
Daniel, a quick question. In the international FHIR specification at the bottom of each of the FHIR resource, there is a direct link to the JIRA. Is that the same setup that we have here?
It absolutely is, yes.
Okay, cool, thanks.
No problem. And what Stephen was talking about there is at the bottom of every page of the IG, there's a little thing called propose a change. And you can always click on that, and that will bring then up the JIRA and allow you to go through those steps. You will need to be logged in usually to JIRA, which is the same as your login for Confluence. So they're shared. It's a single sign-on between the two. And I think that's it about the updates there for now. So from now on, if you have any specification feedback, you see something in AU Core that you think needs to change, you think something's missing, something's overly prescriptive, we're going to go through and raise that in JIRA, and that'll come in for consideration by this group, the technical design group. So let's move on to the results of the vote. Sorry, Ruben, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, just on raising tickets in JIRA, just 2 requests. Please make sure that you select the appropriate FHIR specification when you do so. It's for this group, it's presumably mainly AU base and AU Core. And then there's an advanced tab on the create ticket issue where you can assign the tickets work group as Australian FHIR work group. If you do that, it just makes things easier for the co-chairs and anyone else to find tickets related to the work we're doing. Thank you.
It's quite important because this is a shared JIRA. People are raising JIRAs I don't know what the rate is, but it's something like every 5 minutes. And we won't spot them if you don't say they're AU Core. They'll just get lost amongst the forest of other JIRAs that are being raised continuously across other specifications. If you've made a mistake or you need something clarified, you can contact one of the co-chairs and we can go have a look at it. Sorry, Stephen?
Just as a thought, I wonder whether or not it will be useful to put out a slide deck in one of our conference pages that sort of give instructions as to how people can procedurally log those change ticket So therefore, it's sort of make it easier for people to follow and therefore log the changes correctly.
Brett, Ruben, is this something, and maybe a little recorded webinar of maybe 10 minutes on how to raise specification feedback for Australian specs we could do?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
And record it and make it available.
Yeah, that's what HL7 International did when they first moved over to Jira for balloting as well. So I think that would be a very useful resource for people to have.
That's great. Can we get that? I know like soonish, it's always good to have stuff now, but I think we definitely want something like that in place. I guess we also have the ballot coming up, the ballot for comments. So we're going to also need something, I think, related to how do people provide ballot feedback. I'll take that offline and I'll follow up with the HL7AU folks on when and how can we get that available to this group. All right. So that's an action on me for the minutes. So results of the Evo. So thank you to everyone who voted. There were 19 people who voted. What's really good is that set of 19 voters actually came from 13 different organizations. So that's really, really good. Ideally, we'd have more people voting, but you know, but as you become comfortable in recording your vote, that's fine. Yes, Heath?
There was a couple of comments that at least I made, and I think Andy made as well. So I was just wondering, I mean, I didn't vote because I would have liked to have had some feedback on those comments, but
Okay, so on the comment that I saw this morning, which is meant to be that bullet point about the improvement comment on the proposal, where you picked up that the proposal itself wasn't clear that usual name.use is usual for name to use. That was accepted by the proposer and would be addressed as part of this inclusion.
cool.
I didn't see any other comments on there, and neither did Ruben, I think, when we went and looked at this, that were substantial or recommended changes to it. But let's actually just do a quick thing. Yes, sorry, Ruben.
I think Andy's comment may have been around must support more generally. Is that right, Andy?
Andy asked about, which wasn't about name to use, but about what does it mean for a requester to reject non-conformant resources. I don't consider that as materially significant to the name. Do we adopt name to use vote? If when you're voting, you have a comment, so on the voting options here, and I'll just run through them quickly. So we have affirmative, you can vote negative, you can vote abstain. If you have something that you actually want to refer to discussion, that's when you use this option. And based on that, and you would point out where your comments are, which might be captured here, but maybe they're on the Jira ticket, then we would bring those into the next meeting to run through what those comments are. But to my knowledge, the only comment directly about the name to use proposal is the one, yes, that you made, Heath, pointing out, which I've sort of attempted to capture here, that the text was missing, that name to use is indicated by the use of usual.
So I didn't see any feedback up that that was actually going to be included. Where did that go?
This slide.
Okay. If I'd got some feedback, I would have voted. So I still can, unless it's closed.
You can't, it's closed. The vote closed an hour before this meeting.
Okay.
Which is, I think, some good practice and refinement on how we're progressing. I know both Ruben and I did look at it, but I think, yes, we do need to stay on top of that. Richard.
I think you can use Jira notifications somehow to send people emails when there are comments on something they've made a comment on. I can't remember the mechanics of it, but something like that would have allowed Heath to know that people were commenting on the issue, but it may have given him a bit of noise, and there may have been enough noise that he wouldn't have noticed that there was a reply.
Yes, I think that
Yeah, I don't know whether I got a notification or whether Outlook kindly put it to the side because I don't care. Normally, I don't know, but anyway, yeah, I think it would be just. I don't know whether there's an opportunity for us to leave it open until the meeting, but so that we can get these last minute clarifications. But up to you. Somehow it would be good to.
Procedurally, that's what you put for your tick for refer to telecom, is when you ask for this particular vote to be discussed at the next meeting. That's what that does.
Is that what that means? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and for clarification, if there's even one of those voters voting for refer to telecom, then the whole thing has to come to telecom. And there doesn't need to be any more than one. So yeah, that's the way to do that.
Good to know now.
Mm-hmm. And if at any point, and I will stress that, like the specification feedback continues. It's not necessarily a once-off. We have adopted the name to use proposal. It doesn't need to be the be all, end all, and perfect. The content that was in there and an improvement comment was done has passed with the quorum of votes. If after that is applied, additional clarifications or other things come in, you raise those in Jira. That's the continuous specification feedback loop.
There was another comment that I made about multiple names without the need to have a name use. Richard also commented on that. Again, I don't want to take up any more time of this agenda. I know we're crammed, but it would be perhaps good to understand that better as well. Yeah, I'm happy to provide a comment on that.
I think that particular thing was actually discussed at the last meeting, and we have something in the minutes about human name and what is multiple name to use, and that it's allowed and agreed by the group. We can look at that and provide a response to it.
Thank you.
Ruben, are you happy to take that action?
Sure.
Alrighty. So let's get on to Encounter. So we have the aim for this session around Encounter is that this will be our third dedicated meeting about our Core Encounter. And I guess it might actually be the fourth if we count the information session on it. And out of our previous meetings and the request for feedback, 2 change proposals on our Core Encounter have been raised. These originally surfaced in the GitHub consensus discussions. There are those 2. They were put out in the previous meeting to say we're going to talk about these in this meeting. Please ensure you look at these and come prepared to make a decision in this session about what those are. Do we do it? Do we not do it? And to provide any feedback on the Jira. I didn't see any feedback on those Jiras this morning when I checked about 2 hours ago. The other aim for this session is to agree on a baseline of the AUCDI encounter clinical context mappings into AU Core. As with the name to use, this is a progression of building out our agreements. We're making a decision today based on what we understand. This will continue to be refined. There is the ballot for comment. There's Connectathon in March. We will also have testing. There's the final ballot in August for R1. And at any point in time, people can be raising specification feedback as we go through and discover things, whether that's about improvement of a decision we've already made, or whether that's a discovery of a change request that we still need to do on AU Core Encounter. So I'm going to move into the change proposals for vote. There were two of them. The first one is a proposal to remove must support from this particular extension, the encounter extension for encounter description. And the other is a change proposal to make encounter period optional rather than mandatory. The background material has been linked here. I'm not going to walk through these proposals in detail because there is a lot of background to these over the last few meetings. I can comment that some of this has been the discussion of the Zulip chats, and there's also the material available on how does this align with US Core IPS and IPA. Noting, I guess, for relevance that on the first one, encounter description extension is an Australian extension. There were a number of concerns raised that this was starting to venture in the territory of clinical notes, and the expectation that really for R1, that this extension shouldn't be supported in the R1 of AU Core Encounter. And on the second change proposal, it was noted that US Core has encounter period as optional. So I'm going to open this up to the floor on if anyone has any feedback or comments they wanted to make that they were not able to put into the JIRA as of like a couple of hours ago, before we go into asking if people are ready to vote.
I have one question about encounter period being mandatory. I'm yet to see a good reason for it being mandatory. So I'm sort of puzzled as to why it was ever mandatory.
It
Does
would
anyone
have,
know?
yeah, well, sort of. I can comment on that. Philip, you raise your hand.
Sorry, had to come off mute. You finish your thought. I had a different question on the consensus piece. So just finish your thought on this topic, maybe.
So the origin of a number of the AU Core profiles is actually the union of requirements across a number of national level specifications. And that have must supports in them that generated a set of, here are the things that have been considered relevant or important in national level, and we should be considering them in the AU Core space. Which particular national specification had encounter as a period as mandatory? A lot of the, I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but a lot of the, when I say the input specifications were around continuity of care and transfer, things like discharge summary and so forth, which is likely where that originally came in from.
Thank you. Very clear, quite plausible.
So in that case, then we are not able to support use cases where you receive a piece of historic data in which the encounter period is not known.
exactly the problem that I think was raised, and why the change request was submitted for us to consider. Yeah. Any further comments around encounter periods?
No, I can't think of why we wouldn't know the date. At least
Well,
some.
Heath, you
and
know that historic data you might not always know.
I know, but
Heath,
what good is the data then? Kind of
Well,
thing, like,
you need to exchange data. You're not looking at perfect data that you have to exchange. All right. So there's no reason why you prohibit someone exchange the data because they don't know the encounter period.
yeah,
I don't think that the argument is good enough.
Heath, I can give you an example in the hospital space. So I won't say that this is every Liz and Riz provider, but most of the Liz and Riz providers that we interface in at the hospitals don't have the same encounter concept as the EMR and the PAS systems do, because they've been built around the billing rules for MBS, which, as I understand it, is more on a daily basis. And so depending on, if you have a full circle order going to the Liz or Riz and then a result coming back to that order, it's clearly connected to the encounter that order was placed in my system. But I have to accept a lot of times unsolicited results because the Liz or the Riz has changed the results that it was going to send. Maybe a different test was decided to be done or communicated or canceled or something like that. And it's not always connected back to the originating order. And so in that instance where I receive those results, I have to put them against an encounter. And the common process in at least my system is that I have kind of a historical or an unknown encounter. And that encounter won't have dates because it's kind of created on the fly when it's needed. But there are results tied to it because those results came to me not connected to an encounter, not connected to an order or anything else that I can tie it to. So that's a practical example where you might want access to the results, but the encounter that they're connected to has no information.
so is there a revisit number or something that we can?
Yeah, of course there's a in my called a FHIR number or a visit number. So there is a unique identifier, but it does not have a period. It doesn't have a start or end date. The results kind of just get dumped there if we can't process them any other way so that they don't get hidden from the clinician, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
So unless you want to force people to put in no value, otherwise, I don't think that is a good practice to make it mandatory.
Well, I mean, having said that, with our must support rules, it would mean that we would have to put a missing data reason there.
Must support doesn't mean mandatory, Heath, you know that.
I know, and I'm saying if we leave it as mandatory, then we're forcing people to actually put an extension on there to say this was missing unknown. And I don't see a reason why that would be a bad thing. But yes, I understand it's probably not something that a lot of systems currently do, but
it's a bad thing that you cause extra work without actually achieving any meaningful outcome.
You can have an empty period. You just have no start and no end.
No, you can't do that.
Why? They're both optional.
If you make it
there
mandatory,
are rules within the data type that say that one of them has to be supplied. Pretty sure.
Yep, that's right. There's a constraint on it. Anyway,
every element has to have contents. So you could have a start or an end or an extension, and that you get that constraint for free.
Okay. Any other comments about encounter period? So at this point, I'm going to ask, is someone happy to motion that encounter period should be optional?
I will move that.
Thank you, Stephen. Is someone happy to second that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dylan. I will now launch the poll for the vote on that. if I can do that. Let me go to polls. And people should
Philip's got
now
his
see
hand
the
up.
voting. Oh, sorry, Philip.
Yeah, mine's for the discussion around the encounter extension. So that's what my hand is up for. When you're ready,
We'll go to that after this vote. Okay, we're still looking for some holdouts to tap in, affirmative, negative, or if you don't feel that you can vote either for or against this, please abstain. Okay, voting activity has almost ceased. Hang on, we've just got a couple more coming in. All right, I will end that poll there and share the results. Everyone should hopefully be able to see that now. That motion has passed. So we will now make encounter period optional in AU Core Encounter. Hang on, did I share the results? Does that work then?
You did. I
People-
saw them.
Okay, good, excellent. Okay, I'll stop sharing. And now let's go to the other change proposal in the encounter description extension. Philip?
Yeah, so my question was just make sure I understood what we were voting for here. So if we remove the must support, my understanding is that we remove the required extension for an encounter description, but you could still have an encounter description presented. It just may be free text or a terminology that you put in that you, I guess, recognize. Is that the way to interpret this proposal?
It is, I guess, so two parts to this. The encounter description extension isn't the whole narrative. And maybe Richard or someone from the agency might be able to better talk about the specific use of this extension. It came out of some of the agency work around clinical synopsis. Richard or Stephen, do you want to give a real quick rundown on that?
I'll give a quick rundown. We had some agency systems where people for an encounter wanted to be able to provide, in a sense, a description of what happened in the encounter. And that's different to the FHIR encounter.txt element because it's meant to have more information in it than people were wanting to put into the description they had. So it's sort of like an encounter. It's like notes on the encounter or key aspects of the encounter. It was that sort of thing that people wanted a place to put it. While the encounter.txt is supposed to include everything in the encounter, or at least all of the structured data in the encounter. And so it wasn't a good fit. But I accept that it's not a widely used aspect of trying to record encounter information, and that probably not many systems have it as a requirement. Any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this would remove it that other systems wouldn't have to support it, but if you do have a system that has this detail, they could present it as part of the FHIR profile. Is that the way to interpret the change?
That's the way I'd interpret it. And so it goes from you have to support it to be conformant to you can ignore it.
Yeah.
It's outside the scope of what you're expected to support.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Any further questions about this change proposal or any other comments? Keith?
I'm strongly for this being removed because I feel this is actually an anti-pattern, and my understanding is this is, I think it's very open to abuse, because I don't think we should be using this for a summary at all. And there is guidance in AU Core on how clinical notes should be supported. So I have no problem with it as a kind of a short description to help you in a list of encounters to be able to identify something, almost like a title. But if it starts to get into some of the other things like a summary or a note, then I think it's really dangerous if we start going down that. But so all in favor of removing it until we better understand how we're going to support summaries in general.
That made me nervous when you said, oh, they might put a couple of words in there to begin with and start sorting them by that. And then we're down a slippery slope. What is this thing really all about? It's people are starting to smart data in a description field.
And the other thing is the type on this is only a string, so which helps me to some extent to see, oh, this isn't comprehensive note, because you would want using an annotation or something if you wanted to have a comprehensive note. But as I said, I think we need to better understand what this extension is what its purpose really is, and see how to go from there. But at this stage, R1, I think this is not R1, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's hard to argue if it's allowed here, then why shouldn't it be on every other resource I want?
But it's also, I think it's.
I believe.
I think there's a case to take it back to FHIR work group even and say, what is this, right? Because it's I think it's a bit unclear, and I think so consequently, I think a no-go for this.
Because are they saying that I'm having an encounter with my GP and the GP decides to write down, yeah, David was feeling weird today, so he came in. Is that, and that was part of the encounter?
Yeah, that sounds like exactly what it would be used for.
Yeah, I think it's also, it is verging what Heath is saying, like it starts to smell like a clinical note or a summary and kind of entry at this point, and I start to say, well, maybe we should be thinking about that more broadly and the right approaches for those things rather than having a extension to do this.
Having said that, I do have profiles where I use this, but I use it in the context of a title.
Yeah,
it's almost like a consultation note title, but not the actual consultation. So maybe this kind of encounter happened today by this person.
Yeah, it does say overview or summary, which is a little evil, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's worth displaying the definition of the extension, which says something about what it's trying to do. I support I support this not being must support, but there's more information about what it is intended to do. But yeah, I don't think it should be must support in core.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions about specifically in relation to the AU Core, the proposal under discussion? Okay, at this point, I will ask if someone is happy to motion to remove must support from this extension in the AU Core encounter profile.
I'm happy to motion that.
Thank you, Heath.
And
is someone happy to second? Phil?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Okay, I will launch the poll for that vote. Okay, please go ahead and vote. Okay, we've still got a few holdouts. Yep, excellent. That's coming through now. Okay, if you don't feel like you can vote, don't forget you can abstain. If you don't feel like you are confident enough to vote a yes or a no to this. Just give that another 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the voting there, and I will share the results. Okay, so that motion is passed. We will now be removing my support from that particular extension. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually slightly change up the agenda because we were going to talk about and then go through the mappings and go through a vote for that. But I really want to make sure we can get through some of the gender proposals before that. So what I might do is actually move, we might need to table the encounter again and put the floor for the gender identity discussion. So that we can actually highlight some of this before we need to come into a meeting on it. Ruben, are you comfortable doing that?
Yep, I'm fine. Just wanted to check. Do you want me to leave a few minutes at the end to circle back to anything? Or are there other things after this?
There's not really only what's happening next that we'll need to make sure that we provide clarity on, but that's it.
Yep. No, that's all fine. I don't think that these proposals are going to take very long. So on to the next slide. So hi, everyone. Before I kick off with all of this, I just wanted to flag that the other Spark project, the AUCDI specification, which is being worked on by the clinical design group, has decided and agreed that gender identity and pronouns will form part of the AUCDI dataset. And it's probably worth noting that these proposals are really to support doing that in AU Core. So I think you've all heard me by now talk on about the Gender Harmony project. If you're not familiar with it, the short link is there, as well as the link to their implementation guide. As a quick summary, Gender Harmony is trying to develop data elements to support better capture and meaningful use of gender identity and related data elements like pronouns, sex, parameter for clinical use, name to use, and so forth. Today, we're talking about adopting gender identity from the Gender Harmony Implementation Guide in AU Core. The definition they have for gender identity is an individual's personal sense of being a man, woman, boy, girl, non-binary, or something else. And the datum represents an individual's identity ascertained by asking them what that identity is. And that's a really key aspect to this particular data element. Next slide. Thanks, Daniel. So this is also the usage with respect to what gender identity is. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of this here, but it's important to note that the gender identity element supports representing multiple gender identities. So its cardinality is 0 to many by design. And individuals who identify as having both male and female gender identities at the same time. Each gender identity can be modeled with the same validity period, and so forth. So all of this content is very well described in the Gender Harmony Implementation Guide, and happy to have offline or discussions in further meetings with respect to all this. But I'll check if there are any questions for clarification before we get onto the proposal.
Not at this stage.
So Ruben, sorry, I have to come off mute. I know that we probably go on to the value set later on, but if the value set include sex, identify at birth, would that causing confusion because we're talking about gender identity, we're not talking about sex?
It's hopeful that it won't cause confusion because we are very clearly defining what gender identity is. It's someone's personal sense of what their gender is, which is very different semantically to the sex assigned at birth or observed at birth or parameter for clinical use. That being said, you're right, the value set does have values like male and female because they are valid gender values. But I think the semantics are pretty clear in the Gender Harmony Implementation Guide.
I found the interesting thing for me was that it was about you could only collect this data if you got it from the person. So, I guess that makes it a bit difficult in scenarios where, the person isn't able to tell me what they are, or if they even
Well,
want it.
that's addressed through exceptional values bound to the data element, and we'll get onto that in a moment.
But you talk as if the appropriate value is unknown, but I would have thought, given that definition, that the appropriate value is not applicable. If a person has never been in a position to express a gender identity, then the definition would suggest that they don't actually have a gender identity, because gender identity as defined is about asserted gender identity. And if you've never asserted one, then you don't have an asserted gender identity.
Correct. You don't have one, you the individual, but for the purposes of recording, the exceptional values, you're right, could be unknown, or it could be something like not asked or asked and declined.
It can't be not applicable, because that would indicate that you're a class of object that this kind of concept is not applicable to. That's not correct.
Exactly.
You've just not been asked yet.
Well, I would no, look, don't worry, it's not useful, but I would expect that a newborn who has not yet formed the concepts associated with gender is not one that could have a self-assigned gender. And so in that case, I would think that gender identity, self-asserted gender identity is not actually an applicable concept to a newborn. On the other hand, it's impossible to identify the point at which a person makes the move from being one who can meaningfully assert gender identity. So yeah, I see how this works, but I am troubled by the fact that the definition makes claims gender identity is an aspect of the world and then defines it in terms of evidence gathered.
Well, Richard, there is also optionality. If this is not a relevant concept, you just don't include it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for the reasons just stated, unknown is the perfect word, because if you can't capture it, it is literally unknown. If they're unable to express it, it's also unknown. That makes sense.
Yep.
But before we get bogged down on this, which is not actually part of the proposal, that's a very, I think that's edge case, Richard. That's quite edge case. Let's get through the proposal for what is proposed for AUCDI.
Okay, next slide then. Thanks, Danielle. So this slide, go on here.
I was just going to ask, what is the actual business today? Like, what are we actually deciding on today?
We're not deciding anything. This is just a walkthrough of the proposal.
Okay, sorry.
All right, so this slide, which we're not going to spend a heck of a lot of time on, is really just what the Gender Harmony Implementation Guide says about exchanging gender identity in FHIR. They've developed a new extension which came through in the extensions pack called Individual Gender Identity, which supports exchange of identity in FHIR and is aligned with the data model provided in the Gender Harmony Implementation Guide. The extension has a couple of sub-elements: value, which is codable concept, which is the actual gender value for the individual's gender identity; the period, which is the time period during which the gender identity applies; and a comment to further explain the use of the specified gender identity. More details at the link provided, and we'll go to the next slide, Danielle, which is really the guts of the proposal here. So what's not on the slides, and I forgot to add, was as many of you may recall, the original proposal, which was to actually make this data element adopted in AU base, is a different AU base ticket, and that one is being handled in the FHIR work group. This particular proposal is based upon that AU base proposal being accepted. And the AU base proposal is really addressing introduction of the extension and profiling it for use in Australia by defining an appropriate value set to bind the value element to, and additional sort of aspects of using the data element. So this proposal for AU Core is really saying, assuming that the proposal for AU Base is accepted, that we then adopt it in AU Core according to what's stated on this slide or summarized in this slide. And that proposal is essentially to adopt it as a must support element for AU Core patient related person if it's in R1, otherwise add to backlog R2, and AU Core practitioner. AU Core to implement support for gender identity by making the extension must support in the profile, and it remains optional as 0 to many. In the profile, specific implementation subsection on the profile will include guidance from AU Base on the use of the gender identity extension, and in the gender identity and related concepts subsection of the profile page, we'll add the following statement, which is the one at the bottom, by making patient.extension individual gender identity, etc. Sorry, go on, Danielle.
Given time, I'm going to get you to walk through your next proposal. I think a bunch of this will be controversial. I find it controversial and intend to provide feedback. There is the JIRA link for people. I'm going to ask, given time, that we start putting questions, comments, otherwise, making use of the JIRA, and we'll get through that over the next 2-week period. So this is essentially now a proposal that's been tabled for the technical design group. We have those 2 weeks to go through and provide feedback on that. And we'll also go to the next one, which is about pronouns. So you can see what that is and say now it's open for feedback.
Thanks, Danielle.
There's the slide. Which I should actually edit because we're no longer using GitHub. Apologies, I've only half done that slide. I'll fix that before I send these out.
All right. This next proposal follows a very similar approach to the previous one. So next slide. Pronouns are again an element in the gender harmony specification and defined as the pronouns specified by the patient, it probably should say person, to use when referring to the patient in speech, clinical notes, and in written instructions to caregivers. Like gender identity, this needs to come from the consumer or individual themselves as well. Next slide. Okay, this is all the stuff on usage. I think similar to gender identity, different pronouns can be used in one care setting to another care setting. Pronouns used in the work environment may be different to those in a care setting, as an example. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to bore you by reading everything on there. It's all in the proposal or with links to the gender harmony implementation guide. So next slide. Thanks, Danielle. Again, to exchange pronouns in FHIR, the gender harmony spec have contributed an extension to the FHIR extensions pack called, funnily enough, individual pronouns for use of exchanging pronouns in FHIR. Again, it's got a codable concept value, which are the pronouns. It's got a period when they apply to the individual and can have a comment providing further explanation. Next slide. So again, adoption of individual pronouns in AU Base has been proposed in a separate ticket, and this ticket or proposal assumes that the addition to AU Base is supported. If it is, then again, the idea is to introduce, and this should really say pronouns, not gender identity in point 1, to introduce that as a must support element in AU Core patient related person practitioner, and to implement that by doing the things in those 3 bullet points in section 2 and adding a statement as below. As Danielle said, no doubt some of this is going to be a little bit controversial. I would stress that these are optional elements being proposed. What we're trying to do is ensure these things are supported as soon as possible in AU Core so that anyone that wants to support these or are able to support them can do so in a standardized manner or means. What's not been covered in these slides is that a whole lot of work has been done on terminology to support these data elements. So I encourage you to look at those if you have any questions regarding which pre-coordinated concepts we want to ensure are used for values in these data elements. And these are all extensible bindings. So that's not saying that it's required and that you must use them, but we recommend using them if they're appropriate. And I'll stop there and check if there are questions. I see a lot of chat messages popping by. Are there any we need to come to, Danielle?
No, I don't think so. I think we're going to get a lot of feedback here. There's a lot of chat around what does must support mean and otherwise. There are two people who've put their hands up, noting we're going to put the comments on these particular proposals in the JIRA and talk about them in the next meeting.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to Neil's question just on proportion of patients that are decided on their gender identity. I can give you some statistics from Queensland Health, which I found quite interesting and surprising as well. In our mental health statewide enterprise solution, we have upwards of 10% of patients who have a gender identity alternate to their sex assigned at birth. And the anecdotal feedback during the vaccination drive for COVID was that around 10% were very asserted a gender identity as different to the sex on their Medicare card. So while it's not the majority, it certainly is a significant proportion of patients. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you. Richard?
Unmute.
Your hand is still up.
Yep. Looking at that definition, it strikes me that there's often a connection between if a person wants to express different, if a person has different gender identities in different situations, they may well have different names associated with those different gender identities. Has there been work done on how the links between gender identity and alternate names play out?
So I'll ask you, Richard, to post that question. That question in the JIRA ticket. We aren't able to get to that today.
Yep, good.
So put everything in the JIRA ticket. Put your feedback, things you like, things you don't like, things that you have queries about, and also please make sure you use chat.fhir.org if there are things where you want to actually get into a conversation about things. I'm sure, Ruben, you'll be monitoring that as well so that we can have these discussions around why do things look like this. We are going to go into discussion and intending to vote on these in a fortnight. So this is now open for that feedback, which will be monitored and replied to throughout that period. And I just want to highlight the next meeting. So here they are. There's those two change requests now, those two proposals for AUCDI that are open. We need to go through those. I'll be doing that myself. The other topic that is in the next fortnight or coming up is around immunisation. So both the gender and sex concept, but immunisation. So please make sure you review the AUCDI immunisation profile and raise any specification feedback. I know I'll be doing that. There are some things I don't agree with. There's also the mappings that are there in Confluence for people to have a look at. And please start filling out the vendor support page where we understand what do systems have, what are systems actually supporting, what kind of terminology do you have, because that really helps us get through those decisions and have an understanding about what are the minimum requirements as opposed to, I guess, the nice to haves, because we really need to shape this into a first release and make that something that generally matches what systems are doing today. So here's our pictorial slide on our next couple of meetings there. So the next one, we're going to do a bit of a walkthrough and discussion about AUCDI immunisation and what does AUCDI have in it and how would that work in FHIR. And then we've got the meeting around that is hoping to come to some decisions if people have raised change requests for AUCDI immunisation, and to also go through the gender identity and pronouns. We'll see how much feedback comes in as to whether or not we can fit that all in that meeting or if that needs to be held over, like we've had to do with some of the encounter pieces. So this is the current sort of schedule for that. And the last thing I want to highlight for people is that there is indeed a connectathon coming. There's a 3 days in March. So it's a 20th to the 22nd of March. This is in Sydney. There will be a 1-day plenary and technical design group meeting where we're meeting in person. And then there's a 2-day connectathon where we're going to go through and be testing AU Core through some scenarios. This stuff is not yet out on Eventbrite. We have the days locked in, but they're just locking in the venue at the moment, which is why we don't have the tickets. I will make sure to post in Zulip, so chat.fhir.org, as soon as this is available, so that we can get some technical design group people in there with priority for getting spaces, because spaces are always limited and we always sell out. So they're the announcements I just wanted to make at the close of the meeting. So I'm going to stop sharing there and ask if anyone has any other business that we need to talk about now before I close out.
Daniel, if I can have 30 seconds, I just have a question of curiosity to Ruben. Ruben, you cite some Queensland Health statistics about the use of gender identity and association with vaccination. Are they using sex or are they using gender identity in that kind of recording?
At the time, they were recording gender identity.
Hence my question of curiosity. Never mind, this is an off topic that shouldn't take up time at this call, but I'm just curious about it. Thank you.
Sure.
Just a comment on the must support. There seems to be still some confusion about must support, the implications from an implementer's perspective on must support when things are optional. I think it's quite clear when things are mandatory, but when it comes to being optional, what is actually being asked of us. So I'm certainly still struggling a little bit, but I'm seeing similar questions along the line. So it might be good to, I don't know whether we need a Zulip chat or some sort of forum to be able to the side of, the session we had previously, which was really informative. I think we need something quite practical in the context of a particular scenario, including some of the ones that we talked about today. Is what would the implication be? So
there was an explanation posted of what it means in the context of the name to use proposal. We do have a Zulip topic available that no one has made use of yet. I will post it here. That will be monitored, and if people have questions about must support, that's where we should be talking about what is AU Core doing.
So when you say that must support about gender identity in this chat?
No, not gender identity. There was the explanation. Well, yes. If you have questions around what does must support mean for the gender identity extension proposal, you can put them into that chat there, the AU Core must support chat.
Did you say there was an answer in this chat about gender
Not
identity?
about gender identity.
Just a question.
As part of the name to use proposal, there was a whole section that talked about what does that mean for name to use.
I think that's where questions got raised. But anyway.
Well, one was raised about how does the system reject non-conformant resources? And the answer to that is AU Core doesn't impose obligations on how you do that. The FHIR standard says you may reject non-conformant resources. AU Core has surfaced that to make sure it's not lost, like it does for all the maze or all FHIR standard maze, basically in AU Core, that are highlighted to draw people's attention to it. But AU Core doesn't actually impose any obligations on that.
Anyway, we'll go to Zulip.
Yep, sounds good. Okay. So let's bring this to a close. Thanks, everyone. We've come to a position on 2 of those change requests. We've got some new ones out for review. As usual, I will send out the meeting minutes and put up the links to these and the slide packs, hopefully by the end of today. I realize we've got a long weekend. And I will see you probably maybe next week on Friday at our pre-consensus session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.